Sinha, third year student, BA LLB, Amity Law School, Delhi, and I'll be conducting this session. And I'm extremely honored to introduce our speakers for this session, Senior Advocate Sridhar Pottaraju and Senior Advocate Ritvik Datta. Uh, Senior Advocate Sridhar Pottaraju sir is a graduate in BCom from IIMC, Hyderabad, and is an alumni of Campus Law Center, Faculty of Delhi, Delhi University. Sir enrolled as an advocate with Bar Council of India in 1997 as an advocate on record. And he started as an advocate on record in 2005. Sir is an articulate, focused professional engaged in detailed research, analysis, and interpretation of laws with about 20 years of standing of bar. Sir has handled a wide range of cases from constitutional laws dealing with fundamental rights, civil laws, arbitration laws, and many others. Sir has specialized in providing holistic litigation strategies to minimize litigation for clients. Sir has argued in the Supreme Court, in the High Court, tribunals, and various other branches of the law. I would please call Drishti to felicitate Sir. Thank you, Drishti. Our second speaker, Senior Advocate Ritvik Datta sir, is a renowned environment lawyer. He is a Supreme Court lawyer and has been there for more than a decade. Sir fought his first case at the age of 28, representing the Dongriya Kond tribals of Niamgiri, who wanted to stop the bauxite mining. Sir was a recipient of Sanctuary ABN Embryo Wildlife Service Award in 2007 and CARE Zezis Award in 2005 for wildlife conservation. Legal initiative for forest and environment was set up by Sir in 2005. The aim of the organization is to establishment of environmental democracy through the use. Okay. I'll call Abhinav for, Aniket for the felicitation. I'm really sorry. I'll please request Ritvik sir to come and continue the session.
Good afternoon to all of you. The topic given is the judgment of the Uttarakhand High Court with respect to declaring rivers as legal entity. And it'll not be proper for me to actually say what is there in great details in the judgment in the next 15 minutes, but I'll try to highlight why it's significant, though with the caveat that the judgment is currently been stayed by the Supreme Court. But nonetheless, it's important to see it in the context where the High Court has held it as a living entity. What would be important here is firstly to look at maybe the jurisprudence itself with regard to rivers. And if you've noticed it as students, you would have read the famous MC Mehta versus Kamal Nath case, where the first major judgment where rivers, lakes, forest was held as trust held by the state. So therefore, if you look at it, 1997 was the first time when the public trust doctrine got included as part of Indian jurisprudence. And what it said is the state is the trustee of all natural resources, and it cannot, in simple terms, give it in terms of private ownership to any entity. We all know that in reality what has happened today in India is not that. The public trust doctrine has been part of Indian law, but rivers, lakes, forests have all actually been given, handed over to public entities, private entities, And in a way, the public trust doctrine stands violated when we destroy the forest, the rivers, and the lakes. If you look at today's data, even this year's data, about 92,000 hectares of forest land has been cleared for various projects across the country. Subsequently, the trust doctrine itself had undergone some changes. In the natural resource allocation matter, the Supreme Court said, well, public trust doctrine does not mean you cannot alienate lakes, rivers, forests, but it requires a high level of judicial scrutiny when you give natural resources to private entities. At the same time, what was happening throughout India, and today I think we have to understand the background of these cases very importantly, is that we are today a country which is having the maximum number of dams under constructions. The Himalayas is the maximum dammed mountain range in the world. No other mountain and system in the world has been subjected to so much of dams as the Himalayas itself. And every single river that you today see, I don't know, as students, if you ever go to Himachal, you go to Sikkim, you go to Uttarakhand, you will no longer see the river flowing anymore. In most of it, it is passing through tunnels. And it's called run of the river scheme. And I say it is not run of the river, it is running away with the river. A flowing river as an entity today has become extinct for bulk of the river system in India today. So you don't find a Ganga that is free flowing. You don't find any river today. The Teesta in Sikkim doesn't flow, it flows through tunnels. In Arunachal, about 125 dams are planned, and if it comes up, not a single river in the state will flow free. And therefore, it's very important because there is a general idea that if you let water flow in a river and go to the ocean, it's a waste. And therefore, we must tap it. And keeping these things in mind, I think we have to keep this judgment in view. What did this judgment say? There are two decisions, and I think you can all read it. One is Muhammad Salim, and second is Lalit Miglani. And what the court said, to be very, very fair about it, is not something very innovative. Just a few weeks before the Uttarakhand High Court delivered its judgment, the New Zealand court declared the river as a living entity. It declared it as a living entity. It declared it as a person with rights and duties. And therefore, and very importantly, it made the local tribe, the parents, or applying the parents patria doctrine, the local tribe in New Zealand as the one who will decide on the river, because they are the ones who are directly there and residing next to the river. Now, what I find very interesting, if I just highlight few parts of the judgment, is that it says the river Ganga and Yamuna are worshipped by Hindus. These rivers are very sacred and revered. It goes on to say that it then applies the principle that if an idol can be regarded as a living entity, a juristic person, why should a river that is flowing not be regarded as a living person? And it goes on to a very important aspect, that is, you stop a flowing river, the entire life of the river comes to an end. You mine a river bed, the entire ecological functions that are performed at the river comes to an end because it's a living entity. You go and see a dam and see the water of the dam. It has no life. It is deep green in color and it will not have any life of its own. When a river flows, it brings in oxygen. It brings in minerals. So when water flows, we say it is not just a flow of water, it is a flow of nutrients that come in. So by actually stopping the flow, you actually make it a dead entity. And therefore, I would say what is very, very important in the judgment is the fact that it says, and I'll just read two important paragraphs from the judgment is, River Ganga and Yamuna are breathing, living, and sustaining the communities from mountain to sea. It's a very important one. It is something that sustains the communities from mountain and steel. Accordingly, the exercise of parens patriae jurisdiction, the river Ganga and Yamuna, all the tributaries, streams, every natural water flowing, which flow continuously or intermittently in the rivers, are declared as juristic legal persons and living entities having the status of a legal person with all corresponding rights, duties, and liabilities of a living person in order to preserve and conserve the Ganga and Yamuna. That's the very significant part of the judgment. I'll quote the second one, Lalit Piglani, where the issue came in that if you're concerning the river Ganga and Yamuna, what about other entities? And the judgment then says, rivers, lakes have intrinsic right not to be polluted. Polluting and damaging of rivers, forests, lakes, water bodies, glaciers will be legally equivalent to harming, hurting, and causing injury to persons. Rivers, forests, lakes, waters, glaciers, springs have a right to exist, persist, maintain, sustain, and regenerate their own vital ecological system. The rivers are not just water bodies, they are scientifically and biologically living. The rivers, forests, lakes, water bodies are unified and indivisible whole. The integrity of river is to be required to be maintained from glaciers to oceans. We hasten to observe that the local inhabitants living on the banks are linked with rivers and lakes having their voices too. So I'll just stop here as two of the very important quotes from the judgment, which says they are living entity, they have the right not to be harmed, they have the right to exist, to persist, and to flow. And this is the right that is given to individuals, and that must extend to rivers itself. And they extend it later to forest, to lakes, water bodies, glaciers, and springs. And I would say this is a very positive jurisprudential development that has happened. It is important because we don't consider, honestly, rivers as a living entity. Today, there's a massive plan to link up rivers in India. We want the northern rivers to meet the southern rivers to meet up with the further southern rivers. East-flowing rivers become west-flowing rivers. It is not something that we can play around with, but we are doing it. And we are doing it because we treat rivers as an entity with which we can play around with. You know, there was a Ministry of Water Resources at one time. Today we don't have a Ministry of Water Resources. It's called the Ministry of Water Resources, River Development, and Ganga Rejuvenation. It's a beautiful name, but there's a serious problem. The problem comes in because the idea is, well, all rivers can be dammed so long as Ganga is rejuvenated. So I said we have first started what is called the class system of rivers. Ganga is the upper class river. All other rivers are the working class river. Those working class rivers can be dammed, tapped, polluted, do whatever. So when you fight to save the Tista or the Brahmaputra, well, nobody talks about sacredness. Ganga ko kuch nahi karne denge. Baki ko to kuch karna hi hoga. They have to be developed. They are underdeveloped. They are premature, immature. That's the approach that is there. So therefore, if you look at the judgment, it gives a very strong foundation to the belief. Though it is limited to the Ganga initially, it expands to other by saying all streams, rivers, tributaries. It's important. But there is a place where this judgment comes in a slightly problematic domain. And this is where it says, well, it is a living entity, but there must be a doctrines of parens patriae who will be the guardian of it. And then it says, well, the court says, we appoint the Director Namami Gange, the Chief Secretary of the state, and the Advocate General of the state of Uttarakhand are declared as persons in locus parentis as the human face to protect, conserve, and preserve the river Ganga and their tributaries. Now, this is where I see an inherent conflict of interest between the river and the guardian. Now, what will the parent want? Now the parent here in this case wants a dam because the state wants a dam. The doctrine of parens patriae says, well, you have to keep the interest of the river in mind. If you are the chief secretary of the state, whose interest will you now first protect? Who is paying your salary? Who is the advocate general representing? So I would say that this is where the judgment falters in identifying who the parent is. And the parent in this case is someone who inherently has a conflict with the right of preservation and maintaining the entity. When as an environmental lawyer, when I stand in court saying I don't want a particular dam because I want the river to flow, who files the affidavit on behalf of the state? The chief secretary. Who defends the state? Either the advocate general or the additional advocate general. And that's where I find that there is a serious conflict of issue when it comes to the implementation. And since it's a gathering, when I find and I look at it, the court suddenly comes to a very strange notion of saying, well, we extend who all should be the parents. And now we have a strange situation of a river with multiple parents. And the multiple parents are given by name. And I find it also interesting, says that who will be the parents. It says, I'll just quote here and then I'll stop there, saying that the Chief Secretary, State of Uttarakhand, parent number 1, or the parents patria, Director Namami Gange, Mr. Praveen Kumar, Director NMCG, Mr. Ishwar Singh, Legal Advisor Namami, Mr. Balram K. Gupta, Director Academics, Chandigarh Judicial Academy, and MC Mehta, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India. And that's where it gets very personal. To name a Director Academics of the Chandigarh Judicial Academy suddenly as a parent patria doctrine applied, I don't find any logic to it. And so therefore, my point is, I think it's an extremely important step in recognizing rivers as a legal entity. But I think it's a job half done. I think it will need a lot of evolution of the doctrine itself. It will also need the court to actually examine what could be the implication of this particular judgment on the larger aspect, because the fact is, how do you actually merge many of the other activities that take place on a river? For example, today when you look at Yamuna, it's a very interesting river. You know, when you look at Yamuna, if you look at it as a living entity, it is not a living entity, it's a dead entity. One of the very important ways to judge a river quality is what is the level of fecal coliform that is there. It's excreta matter in a river. The figure for that is, the standard that is there is that there can be an acceptable fecal coliform of 500 parts per million. Right? That's the acceptable fecal coliform. So when you drink a glass of water, it will have an excreta of someone, right? And the standards fix says it shall be 500 parts per million is the acceptable one. What is there in Yamuna? Can you, any one of you guess what is the fecal coliform level in the Yamuna today? The standard is 500. And what is the existing one? It is 1,60 lakhs. That's it. So when you flush in your toilet, the water is cleaner than what you get in the Yamuna. Right now the question comes in, who will sue, and will Yamuna sue the government for killing it? That's I would say, when you look at the judgment, I'll just end here and leave it to Sridhar to take the difficult task of addressing on these issues maybe. But I would say there is a lot of unfinished task of how do you implement once you declare it as a living entity, or does it remain only as a judgment which is only of academic value and has no real practical value in the given circumstance? I think that's the challenge. And with that, I think I'll just end and give it to the next speaker. Thank you.